The first time I saw her, she was standing at the edge of my wheat field, bathed in the silver glow of the moon. Her skin shimmered, a strange mix of silver and blue, pulsing faintly as if she were breathing through it. Her eyes, large, glowing and unblinking, locked onto mine. I should have run. I should have grabbed my shotgun and called the sheriff. Instead, I took a step forward. And that was my first mistake. She staggered, a weak gasp escaping her lips before she collapsed into the tall wheat, her strange body barely making a sound as she hit the ground. For a moment, the only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat, hammering in my ears. Then, the sky lit up. A massive shadow passed overhead, a dark, unnatural shape against the stars. My blood ran cold as I saw it. A ship, hovering silently, scanning the fields with beams of eerie green light. I ducked. Whatever this was, it wasn't human. My eyes flicked back to the unconscious girl. Whoever, or whatever, they were hunting her. And somehow, I had just been dragged into the middle of it. I stayed low, barely daring to breathe as the green searchlights swept over the field. The ship made no sound except for a low hum, almost like an electric current vibrating through the air. It moved with eerie precision, methodically scanning row after row of wheat, as if it knew exactly where to look. I clenched my fists, my gut screaming at me to run. To pretend I hadn't seen anything. To let whoever was searching find her and take her away. But then I looked at her again. She was breathing but barely. Her strange, silver-blue skin flickered with light, like an old neon sign about to go out. Her chest rose and fell in uneven, shallow gasps. She was dying. And I had no idea what to do. The ship's searchlights drew closer, illuminating the wheat in an eerie glow. If I left her here, they'd find her. If I tried to move her, I might get caught too. I had spent my whole life avoiding trouble, keeping to my own quiet routine, wake up at dawn, work the fields, eat dinner alone, sleep, and repeat. But in that moment, something deep inside me made a choice before my brain could catch up. I lunged forward, grabbed her under the arms, and dragged her toward the barn. She was lighter than I expected, almost too light, like her bones weren't as dense as a human's. Her skin felt unnaturally cool, but not cold, more like touching metal that had been left out in the evening air. The hum of the ship grew louder. I gritted my teeth and pulled her through the tall wheat, heart pounding. The barn was just a few yards away now. If I could get her inside, maybe, just maybe, I could keep her hidden. Then she stirred. A faint sound escaped her lips, almost a whisper. At first, the words were garbled, something completely alien, but then, almost like her voice was adjusting, she whispered in broken English. I need you. Needs meat. I froze. What the hell was she talking about? Her glowing eyes flickered open, locking onto mine. She looked desperate, scared, and in pain. And then, before I could say anything, she went limp again. The ship's searchlights swept dangerously close, sending my pulse skyrocketing. I had no time to think. No time to question what she had just said. I threw the barn door open, pulled her inside, and shut it just as the green light passed overhead. Pressing my back against the wooden wall, I held my breath and listened. The ship hovered above my field for a few more agonizing seconds. Then, without a sound, it turned and drifted away, disappearing beyond the trees. I let out a slow, shaky breath. The girl lay on the barn floor, barely moving. Her breathing was weak. Her silver-blue skin pulsed erratically. She didn't look like she had much time left. I had no idea who she was. No idea what she meant when she said she needed me. But one thing was clear. If I didn't do something, she was going to die. I stared at her, still trying to process what had just happened. The ship, the strange alien girl, the way she had collapsed in my arms, whispering those bizarre words. She needed me. She needed a mate? That couldn't be right. Her body twitched, and a faint groan escaped her lips. She was still alive, but just barely. I knelt beside her, hesitating before placing a hand on her shoulder. Her skin felt even colder now, like it was losing whatever energy had been keeping her going. I had no idea what to do. I wasn't a doctor. I was just a damn farmer. Her breathing grew shallower. Hey, I whispered, giving her a small shake. You need to tell me what's wrong. What do you mean you need me? Her glowing eyes flickered open again. This time, there was something new in them, fear. She grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong despite her weak state. My body tensed as another jolt of that strange static energy ran through me. I could feel her pulse, except it wasn't like a human heartbeat. It was irregular, more like an electric current struggling to stay alive. Can't survive, she rasped. No, mate, no life. What the hell does that mean? I asked, shaking my head. Mate as in reproduction? That's why you're here. Her breath hitched and she let go of my wrist. For a long moment, she just lay there, struggling to breathe, before finally whispering, "Not what you think." She groaned and curled into herself slightly, clutching at her chest like she was in pain. Whatever was happening to her, she didn't have much time. I needed answers. You need something to survive, right? I said, trying to put the pieces together. Something from a human? What is it? Water. She weakly shook her head. Energy, connection. Strong. I had no idea what that meant, but I didn't have time to figure it out. A low humming sound rumbled through the night air, making my stomach drop. The ship was coming back. I stiffened, every instinct in my body telling me to run, but I forced myself to stay calm. Whatever they wanted, they weren't done searching for her yet. I moved quickly, grabbing an old tarp from the barn wall and draping it over her. If they sent anything down to look, I needed to make sure she wasn't found. I pressed myself against the wooden wall again, my breath shallow. Outside, something landed in the field with a thud. It wasn't the ship. This was something else. Something smaller. A chill ran down my spine as I heard the unmistakable sound of metallic footsteps crunching through the wheat. I peered through the cracks in the barn wall, my pulse hammering. There, moving through the field, were 3 humanoid figures. But they weren't human. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with elongated limbs and metallic, insect-like plating covering their bodies. Their eyes glowed a deep, pulsating red, scanning the ground with an eerie precision. They weren't just looking for her. They were hunting. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay quiet as one of them turned its head toward the barn. It stood completely still, its glowing eyes narrowing slightly, like it could sense something. My hands clenched into fists. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't some action hero. But I had a feeling that if they found her, things would go bad. The alien girl stirred again under the tarp, letting out a weak gasp. One of the hunters' heads snapped toward the barn. Shit. I moved before I could think. Grabbing an old wrench from the tool rack, I hurled it out the back door of the barn, sending it crashing into a pile of scrap metal. The sound was loud enough to make all 3 hunters whip their heads around and stalk toward the noise. I didn't wait to see if the distraction worked. I dropped to my knees and pulled the tarp away from the girl. We have to move, I whispered urgently. Now. She barely responded, but I didn't give her a choice. I hoisted her up, throwing one of her arms over my shoulder. I peeked out the barn door. The hunters were still investigating the noise, their backs turned. This was my chance. I moved as fast as I could, carrying her out the side door and into the tree line behind my property. The thick brush gave us cover, but I knew it wouldn't last long. As soon as we were far enough away from the barn, I collapsed to my knees, panting. She groaned softly, her body growing even weaker. I needed to get her somewhere safe. Somewhere the hunters wouldn't look. Then it hit me. The old underground bunker. It was a leftover from some Cold War paranoia, built by my grandfather decades ago. I had barely used it, but it was still intact. It was our best shot. Gritting my teeth, I hoisted her back up and started moving. The bunker wasn't far, but with hunters stalking the area, every step felt like a death sentence. We reached the hatch, half buried under dirt and vines. I yanked it open, the rusted hinges groaning in protest. I climbed down first, then carefully lowered her into the bunker before sealing the hatch behind us. Finally, we were safe. At least for now. I leaned back against the cold concrete wall, catching my breath. She lay on the floor, her glowing eyes half-lidded, her body trembling. She wasn't going to last much longer. I needed answers. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. No more cryptic half-sentences. You need to tell me exactly what's going on. Who the hell are you? What are those things? And why do they want you so badly? She exhaled shakily. I am Zephyra, she murmured. Azerian. They do want me because I am incomplete. I frowned. Incomplete. She closed her eyes for a moment before whispering, Zerians must bond. Without bond, they decay. Our bodies fall apart. But she had said mate earlier. Now bond. I didn't like where this was going. Wait, I said, staring at her. Are you telling me you need a human to survive? Her glowing eyes flickered open again, locking onto mine. Not just any human, she whispered. You. A deep, sickening chill ran through me. Whatever was happening, it was far bigger than I had thought. And for some reason, I was the key to it all. I didn't know how long we sat there in the dark, the only sound in the bunker the quiet, erratic breathing of the alien girl, Zephyra. Her skin's glow had faded to something dim, like a dying ember. She needed me. That much was clear. But what did that mean? I ran a hand through my hair, trying to make sense of it all. She had said Zerians needed to bond or they would decay. And for some reason, I was the one she needed to bond with. I exhaled slowly. So, what happens if we don't bond? Zephyra's glowing eyes flickered open. I will cease, she murmured. Her voice was weaker than before. Cease? You mean death? I swallowed hard. Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. The Zerians weren't like us. They weren't just another humanoid species. They had something different about them, something that tied their survival to bonding. But why a human? Outside the night was still. Too still. And then, in the silence, came the sound I had been dreading. A low, metallic hum. The hunters were still out there. I tensed, listening carefully. They had searched the barn. Now they were getting closer. The bunker was hidden, sure, but if they scanned for energy signatures, they'd find us in no time. I had to think fast. Zephyra stirred, her breathing shallow. I didn't know how much longer she had left. I moved to the bunker's old control panel, flipping the power switch. The emergency generator rumbled to life, dim yellow lights flickering on. She flinched at the sudden brightness, then forced herself up on her elbows. They are coming. No kidding, I muttered. She grabbed my wrist again, and the sudden jolt of energy made me inhale sharply. For a second, I saw visions, images flashing through my mind like memories that weren't my own. A vast crimson sky. Cities floating above an ocean of black water. A towering palace, where monstrous beings sat on thrones of writhing energy. Screams. Destruction. And at the center of it all, humans. I yanked my hand away, gasping. What the hell was that? Zephyra's breathing was ragged. Your kind, stronger than they know. They fear you. My pulse pounded. Oh, the Zerians? She nodded weakly. I didn't have time to process that. The hum of the hunters grew louder outside. I grabbed the old hunting rifle I kept in the bunker. It wouldn't do much against aliens, but I sure as hell wasn't going down without a fight. Then came the metallic screech. They had found the hatch. I barely had time to react before the whole bunker shook, the impact sending dust and debris falling from the ceiling. Zephyra gasped, curling in on herself. Her skin pulsed weakly, flickering like a dying light bulb. They are breaking through, she whispered. I gritted my teeth, gripping the rifle. I had no idea if bullets could even hurt them. But I had to try. A second impact dented the hatch. A third ripped it open. The first hunter dropped inside, its 7-foot-tall metallic body crouched low, red eyes glowing like molten fire. Its limbs unfolded with an eerie mechanical whir, and it turned toward me, its face expressionless but somehow hungry. I raised the rifle and fired. The bullet pinged off its armored exoskeleton like a pebble against steel. Shit. The thing lunged. I barely rolled out of the way in time, the claws raking through the space where I had just been standing. Zephyra let out a weak cry, her body convulsing again. I scrambled back, cocking the rifle for another shot, not that it would do much. The second hunter dropped down next to the first, its head swiveling toward Zephyra. And then it spoke. Target acquired. Its voice was wrong, a mix of static and a deep, unnatural growl. It raised a bladed limb, aiming for Zephyra's chest. I didn't think. I just moved. I tackled it full force, my body slamming into its metallic frame. It was like hitting a brick wall, but I didn't care. The force knocked us both backward, and we hit the bunker's metal shelving. Something sharp dug into my arm, but I ignored the pain. The second hunter grabbed me, lifting me off my feet like I weighed nothing. Unnecessary organic. Eliminating. I struggled against its grip, but it was like being caught in a hydraulic press. My ribs creaked from the pressure. A brilliant pulse of blue energy erupted from Zephyra's body. The hunter screeched, dropping me as it staggered back. The energy rippled across the bunker, making the walls shake. The first hunter collapsed, twitching violently, its metal plating warping like it was being crushed from the inside. The second hunter turned toward Zephyra, but it was too late. She rose to her feet, her skin glowing brighter than ever. And for the first time, I saw what she really was. Her form shimmered, shifting slightly, her limbs elongating, her silver-blue skin turning almost translucent. The glow intensified, and a strange wave of force pulsed outward. The second hunter tried to move, but it was locked in place. Zephyra lifted a trembling hand, and the hunter's body imploded. The bunker went silent. She staggered, her glow flickering weakly again. I barely managed to catch her before she collapsed. Her body was ice cold. Bonded, she whispered weakly. I swallowed hard. What does that mean? She exhaled slowly. You saved me. The bond is not complete. But you are changing. My skin tingled, a strange warmth spreading through my chest. Zephyra's eyes fluttered shut. She had used too much energy. I turned to the two dead hunters, my mind racing. The bond. The visions. The way those things imploded when she finally unleashed her power. They weren't just after her. They were afraid of her bonding with a human. And that meant I had just become their biggest problem. I didn't know how long I sat there, my back against the cold bunker wall, holding Zephyra's motionless body in my arms. She was still breathing, but barely. Her glow had dimmed to almost nothing, her skin cold to the touch. I had no idea what the hell had just happened. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. But it wasn't just from fear. Something felt different inside me. I could still feel the lingering warmth from when Zephyra had unleashed that energy. It was like something inside me had changed, like a current of energy humming just beneath my skin. You saved me, she murmured weakly. But you are not yet whole. Not whole? I echoed, my throat dry. What does that mean? She exhaled shakily, her glowing eyes flickering open. The bond, it has begun. But it is not complete. You must choose. I didn't like the sound of that. Choose what? I asked. I didn't sign up for any of this. I don't even understand what's happening. Zephyra struggled to sit up, her body trembling from exhaustion. I told you, I cannot survive without a bond. The energy of my kind is unstable alone. I must fuse with another to remain whole. I rubbed my temples. So you're saying you need to bond with me to stay alive. But what does that mean exactly? You're not talking about just some emotional connection, are you? She hesitated, then shook her head. No, it is deeper than that. A merging of essence. Of being. I swallowed hard. And if I say no? Zephyra didn't answer right away. But the look in her eyes told me everything. She would die. I looked around the bunker, at the mangled remains of the two hunters we had just fought off. If those things were just scouts, then I had a much bigger problem coming my way. The Zirians didn't just want Zephyra back. They wanted to make sure she never bonded with a human. I ran a hand through my hair, still trying to process it all. Just last night, my biggest problem had been fixing a busted tractor. Now I was on the run from an alien empire, being told that I had to make a choice that could change me forever. Zephyra watched me carefully. I will not force you, she whispered. It must be willing. I let out a slow breath. I had two choices. One, I walk away, Pretend none of this ever happened. Let Zephyr die and hope that the Xerians leave me alone. 2. I accept the bond, whatever that meant. Become something else. Something that even the Xerians feared. I knew what the smart choice was. But I wasn't a smart man. Tell me what I have to do, I said. A spark of life flickered in Zephyr's eyes. She reached for me, her cold fingers brushing against my chest. You must let me in. I had no idea what that meant. But before I could ask, she placed her palm flat against my chest, and the world exploded. I gasped as a wave of energy surged through me, every nerve in my body igniting like a live wire. Visions flooded my mind. I saw Zephyr's world. A dying planet with a sky like burning embers. Floating cities crumbling into the abyss. Beings like her, flickering and fading, desperate to survive. Then I saw the Xerian overlords. Massive, towering creatures of living energy, seated on thrones of pulsing light. They were ancient, and they were terrified. Not of Zephyr. Of humans. Because we were different. We didn't rely on external energy like they did. Our willpower, our adaptability, our raw stubbornness, it was something they couldn't control. And if a Xerian ever bonded with a human, it could change everything. The visions shattered, and I gasped for breath, collapsing to my knees. Zephyr was still touching me, but now her glow had returned, stronger than before. She looked different, more solid, more alive. I felt powerful. The energy I had felt before was no longer just beneath my skin. It was inside me. I clenched my fist, and I swore I could feel the air vibrating around it. The bond was complete. Zephyr smiled, exhausted but relieved. You are more than human now. I exhaled, still trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. Great, I muttered. So what now? Before she could answer, the ground trembled. A deep rumbling sound filled the air, growing louder by the second. I didn't need to look outside to know what it was. The Xerian mothership had arrived. Zephyr's eyes darkened. They know. I grabbed the rifle instinctively, even though I knew it wouldn't do much. Let them come, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. They're about to find out why humans don't go down easy. Zephyr placed a hand on my shoulder, and for the first time, I saw something new in her expression. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of fear. Because whatever I had just become, even she didn't fully understand it yet. But the Xerians would. And they were about to learn that humanity fights back. The rumbling grew louder. The bunker walls trembled, dust trickling from the ceiling as a massive force settled over the land. I didn't need to look outside to know what had arrived. The Xerian mothership. I exchanged a glance with Zephyr. She was standing now, her silver-blue skin glowing with renewed strength. The bond had worked. She was alive, and I felt different. Stronger. Faster. Like something inside me had unlocked, just waiting to be used. You feel it, don't you? She said softly. I clenched my fist. I did. It wasn't just energy, it was something deeper. A power humming through my veins, an awareness of every movement, every pulse in the air. Zephyr placed a hand on my chest. The bond is new. You do not yet know what you are capable of. Guess we'll find out, I muttered. The moment I stepped outside, I felt it before I saw it. The air was heavy, charged with an unnatural pressure. The wheat fields rippled in waves, bending under an unseen force. And above them, the sky was wrong. A swirling mass of clouds split apart by an enormous, ominous shape. The mothership loomed overhead, a hulking shadow blocking out the stars. It stretched across the sky like a floating city, its underbelly glowing with deep crimson veins of energy. And then the drop pods fell. Dozens of them. Metallic spheres plummeting toward the earth, slamming into the fields with bone-rattling force. As they hissed open, the night filled with the sound of alien shrieks. The hunters had arrived. I barely had time to react before the first one lunged. It was faster than before. The Xerians had upgraded them. This one's bladed limbs flashed as it swung for my head, its red eyes locked onto me. I didn't move. I didn't have to. Because the moment it got close, I felt something snap into place inside me. Time slowed. I saw the attack before it happened, like my mind had already processed the trajectory before my body reacted. I twisted aside at the last second, and before I even thought about it, my hand lashed out. My bare fist met metal. The hunter exploded. Not from bullets. Not from Zephyr's energy. From me. I stared at my hand in shock. My skin still tingled where I had struck it, but there was no pain. No recoil. Just raw power coursing through me. Zephyr was watching, eyes wide. You are adapting faster than I thought. I didn't have time to think about it. More hunters were advancing, their bladed limbs clanking together in unison. And then the ground erupted. A massive construct rose from the soil, one of the Xerian warforms. A hulking behemoth of shifting metal, its body a living machine, its head crowned with pulsing red eyes. It let out a deep, vibrating hum as it turned toward me. Human. The voice wasn't robotic. It wasn't even spoken aloud. It was inside my head. Zephyr tensed beside me. That is an overlord. Great. Just what I needed. The warform's massive arms swung down, aiming to crush me. I didn't move. Instead, I reached up and caught it. The impact should have shattered every bone in my body. Instead, I felt a pulse of energy rippling through my limbs, absorbing the force and sending it right back. The overlord staggered. I threw its arm aside. It had underestimated me. I could feel it now, the way the bond had rewritten something inside me. I wasn't just strong. I was something new. The overlord's voice rumbled through my skull. Impossible. Yeah. I growled. Guess you don't know humans as well as you thought. I launched forward. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to the battle, I was in control of it. The warform swung again, but I ducked under the attack and delivered a punch straight into its chest. Metal crumpled like paper. The overlord shrieked, staggering back. Zephyr lifted her hands, and a pulse of blue energy shot forth, crashing into the warform with enough force to send it skidding backward. The sky split apart again. From the mothership, a new figure descended, tall, armored, cloaked in dark energy. The Xerian Supreme Commander. Unlike the hunters, unlike the warform, this thing felt different. More than just a soldier. A ruler. It landed softly, its gaze locking onto me. You were not meant to evolve, it said. This changes everything. I smirked, flexing my fingers. Yeah. Welcome to the human race. Then we charged. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Zephyr's energy surged through me, and for the first time, I let go. I moved faster than I ever had before, dodging strikes that would have torn me apart, my attacks hitting with the force of a wrecking ball. The Supreme Commander fought back hard. It was strong, but I was stronger. And it knew it. The Xerians had feared this moment. They had done everything to prevent it. But now it was too late. The Supreme Commander staggered, cracks forming along its armor. Its red eyes flickered. This cannot be. Zephyr stood beside me, her energy radiating in waves. You have already lost, she whispered. The Supreme Commander's form began to break apart, its energy unraveling like frayed threads. It let out one last, defiant roar before its body collapsed into dust. The mothership above began to tremble. Without their commander, the Xerian forces were collapsing. The hunters shrieked and dispersed. The warforms crumbled into lifeless metal. And then the mothership vanished. One moment it was there. The next, it was gone. Silence settled over the battlefield. I let out a breath. My body still hummed with power, but I felt in control. Zephyr turned to me, her expression unreadable. It is done. I looked around at the wreckage, at the scorched fields that had once been my quiet farm. Yeah, I muttered. But what now? She stepped closer. You are not the same as before. You have become something more. I exhaled. She was right. I felt it. I wasn't just a farmer anymore. I wasn't just human. I was something the universe had never seen before. And that meant one thing. The Xerians weren't done with me. This was only the beginning. The battlefield was silent. The Xerian mothership was gone, and with it, the last of the hunters. The air smelled of burnt metal and scorched earth. My wheat fields, my quiet, peaceful home were nothing but ruin now. But I was still standing. And I was not the same man I had been yesterday. I turned to Zephyra. She was watching me, her glowing silver-blue skin pulsing in soft waves, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. "You did it," she whispered. "You defeated them." I exhaled, feeling the lingering energy still coursing through my veins. My body was different. Stronger. Sharper. My senses had expanded. I could feel the air vibrating, hear the distant hum of energy sources buried beneath the wreckage. The bond had changed me. And I had a feeling I was just scratching the surface of what that meant. Zephyra stepped closer. "The Xerians will not forget this," she murmured. "You changed everything tonight. They feared a bond between our species. And now they will fear you." I smirked, shaking my head. "Yeah, well, they should have picked an easier planet to mess with." Her expression darkened. "They will return. Not tomorrow. Not next week. But they will come back." I clenched my fists. "Let them. We'll be ready." Zephyra hesitated, then placed a hand on my chest. The familiar pulse of energy passed between us. It wasn't painful. It was warm, steady, connected. "You are not just human anymore," she whispered. "You are something new. A bridge between our species. A warrior of two worlds." I let out a slow breath, taking in what she was saying. She was right. I wasn't just a farmer anymore. I had seen too much. Changed too much. The Xerians would come back. And when they did, Earth needed to be ready. But it wasn't just about Earth anymore, was it? The galaxy was bigger than I had ever imagined. And I had just punched a hole in its status quo. "What now?" I asked, glancing at her. Zephyra smiled softly. "We rebuild. We prepare. And we find others." "Others?" She nodded. "They're more like me. More who escaped. More who resist. The Xerians rule through fear, but fear is not absolute. You proved that today." I stared at the wreckage of my farm, then up at the stars. Something had awakened inside me. Something more than human. A new war was coming. But I wasn't just going to sit and wait for it. I was going to take the fight to them. Zephyra reached for my hand. "You do not have to do this alone." I squeezed her fingers lightly. "But, because I think we just started something big." We turned toward the horizon, where the first rays of sunlight were breaking through the darkness. This was only the beginning. And the universe was about to learn what humans were truly capable of. End of section 6. Fire. What happens next? Ethan is no longer just a farmer. He is the first of something new. The Xerians will return, but this time, humanity will be ready. Collision. Should this story continue in a full-length novel? Let me know. Would you like me to draft a sequel outline or expand on the lore? Rocket.